work. Dad, thanks for coming to the program.
Oh, thank you for having me.
How did you get into theater?
Well, never really wanted to be an actor.
What? Well,
Actually, it all started in high school. Either you took drama or you were taking home economics.
Right,
and
right.
so it went to drama, and I first started in Baytown, going through the high school thing. And
Right.
then afterwards, I was asked to be a military consultant for a play they were doing there.
military consultant. Why? How did you get to be military consultant all of a
They
sudden?
looked me up,
Right.
and so they were doing a company of wayward saints, and
Okay.
they needed uniforms. So
Okay.
one thing led to another, and on the stage I went. So that's how I got started, and been loving it ever since.
So wait a minute. They said they looked you up. So where did they look you up?
Well, I did. I was known in the community as a historian,
Right.
and also I had done work with the Imperial War Museum out of England.
Wow, that's a nice piece.
Yeah, so
You can spend hours there.
yeah, indeed, absolutely.
So the title, because if everyone's like, that's kind of unusual. It's like, what?
Well,
Where did
yes.
that come from?
Actually, while I was doing work
Right.
for them and in a consulting role, one of the people I was working with said, say, oh boy, would you mind if I kind of dig into your past, see what your heritage is? I said, sure, why not? Go ahead. And so time went on, and communicated. He would ask me questions by way of email and whatnot. And one thing led to another, and he says, you know, boy, the problem we have here is you had ancestors that sat in the House of Lords. Would you mind if I forward this on? I said, no, go ahead. You know, so we did, and got a letter from the government, and they wished to bestow upon me the honorary title of a baron. They couldn't do the lordship because I was an American citizen.
Right.
So that's how, and my wife is a baroness. So we received a deed of title and a deed of poll from the government. I've got it in a frame and whatnot. So, but that's how that all took place, and had to register with the government as a foreign title. Actually, it's on record in the Montgomery County Courthouse here.
Why does it have to be on record?
Evidently, there is a law that says when you receive a title or a position from a foreign government, it's a possibility it registers you as a foreign agent. Yeah.
Oh, gee.
So there we go. That's how I got that title. They had the reception in Houston at the Consul General's office.
Right.
So it was very nice.
Interesting. So you have all these units. They looked you up. You've got these uniforms and stuff like that. So what do you normally collect?
Normally, military uniforms. My specialty is the Luftwaffe, or the German Air Force. Although I do German Navy, I also do U.S. Army Air Corps. I also do the SS, and so I've been a collector for years. All started when I was in the 5th grade. My dad was in the Army Air Corps, and they would sit around his buddies, and they would talk about their experiences during the Second World War, and that got me hooked into the history. One thing led to another, and I started collecting, and I'm going, what is this? So I had to learn the history of the item I was working with. So that's how that happened. Then, because of that, I had to learn the language. So I self-applied, and I speak German, and I also speak Russian. So that's how it is. It's an interesting deal. My house, and my wife will tell you, looks like a Air Force or Luftwaffe War Museum, because all these pictures and items and whatnot. And of course, she says, "How many uniforms do you need?" You know? But I've been involved in several movies, and we go all over the United States, East Coast and whatnot, doing World War II reenactments. We also do lectures at schools, and we have air shows and things like that. I've been doing Wings over Houston air show for over 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, not that you do this because it's a hobby, so you spend way more money than you get for this.
Yes.
But how much, let's just say, how much room do you think your costumes and all your, your paraphernalia take up?
It takes in more. I have one room that is just nothing but where uniforms are and equipment. The living room is display cases, one-of-a-kind photographs, artwork, and things like that. None from Herman Goring's collection, but still, it's artwork.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
so that's right. But yeah, it takes up in several rooms in the house.
Yeah. It's amazing, because we always talk about hobby. Hobbies are that's how they suck up your money, right?
Right.
Yeah. And time as well.
Right.
So when you're not doing this reenacting, or now that because you just did Into the Woods with us, and now Dive right in front. What do you do when you want to decompress or just relax?
Well, usually I spend time doing training with him, or my wife has a lot of yard work for me to do and things like this. Yes. So I do that. We live out in the country. We have horses, so we deal with horses quite a bit in there. So that's usually takes up quite a bit of time. So.
And it sounds like you do some traveling as well for things.
Oh yeah, we do Fort Indian Town Gap and which is up in Pennsylvania, and I'm going up to do an event in August in Ohio. This is the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Okay. So the Allies will be coming ashore on landing craft, and I'm the...
In Ohio?
In Ohio. Well, it's being done on Lake Erie.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
And so I'm the deputy German beach commander for that event in there. There's usually about 2,000 reenactors that attend that.
Right. How many people come to watch?
You would. It's unbelievable the amount. What is really, really good though, and the reason why we do this, the World War II veterans are dying off
so quickly. I know, and
we do this to keep their memory alive. It's the greatest generation ever. They went through the Depression, went through a Second World War, and what they did, the sacrifices that they made,
shouldn't be forgotten.
We honor that.
Yeah, and it's about it was when we did a Viking tour, but one part of the tour was a visit Audie Murphy's stand, the Colmar campaign, and it was mostly American, like us, but it was a memorial. It was an awesome ceremony, even though it wasn't meant to be, but that's what it turned out to be. And I love that experience. We'd love to do more. I would love to go back to Normandy, but they still remember. Right. Not much places else in France, but they still remember Normandy.
Absolutely.
To remember the sacrifices that were made. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And when we do air shows and up at Fort Indian Town Gap, the people, the veterans that come up, veterans' families come up, and they are so appreciative of what you do. And we represent all nationalities, and the sacrifices that they went through.
So on stage, do you prefer comedies or drama?
I like both comedies and drama. I've done The Matchmaker. One of the things when I was doing that, I played the part of Stack, which is a rascal, and he's most of the time drunk, and he's an Irishman. So for about 2.5 months, I would go around, and I'd speak in a wee bit of an Irish accent, mind you. And my grandson was down visiting from Alaska, and it got to the point to where even when the normal conversations, he would go, "Grandma, please make him stop." But the whole thing is that whether you're doing a reenactment or something on stage, there's always a modus operandi, method of operation. And it's one thing to learn the lines and to make the moves that the director wants, but you have to become that character. You have to be able to know the history, the research, and become that individual. And that's what, to me, acting is all about. You can do the lines all day long, and make the moves, but unless you become Stack the Drunk Irishman, or you become a German in the Diary of Anna Frank, or if you're doing Over the Tavern, and you're playing the part of the father, in which you're kind of a mixture between Jackie Gleason and Archie Bunker, you have to become that individual on stage.
Yeah, it's awesome, and how does that change you, being these different characters?
Well,
or does it?
No, it does, and I'll tell you why. Is that I see so many people that they are so caught up in a fad or conformity.
Yes.
And whenever you do that, you find yourself constantly stepping outside the box. You become a nonconformist, both when you're on the stage and off, because you think into your mind, do I want to be like that individual, or do I want to be myself?
Right.
So that's the interesting part of it.
But it's tough. Yeah. And so that means, so if they're funny, that's fine. But flawed, I mean, we're all flawed, so that's probably not the stretch. But what about dark?
Dark comedies?
No, not dark, but just dark characters that you now don't have.
Oh my gosh, I've been cast in we did Night of the Iguana right here.
Yeah, well, with Caroline, we were just talking about that. Yeah,
and during the auditions, the director asked, "Okay, I got to ask this. Does anyone here speak German?"
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anyone here that would you accept the part of being a Nazi? Okay, and so I went into that. Being the bad guy is what you're doing is, again, you're providing the motive for what is taking place on stage. You can't have just one of the corners. One of the interesting things, whenever we were doing the pre-show, out here in Diary of Anna Frank, I got a chance to observe and look at a lot of the people that were in the lobby.
Right.
And I heard one comment, and it stood out. And this woman was tugging on her, husband's sleeve, and she says, "Why do they have Germans here?" I didn't say anything or anything like that, but without that, there's no motive for the play to even exist.
It's kind of interesting. We've had, I just went through the meals. Probably like 98% of people loved having you out there.
Oh, wow.
They got it, and they got it. So I thought it was whether it was just for a photo op or they got into the mood, got into the experience. Because we explained it that way. It's just part of the experience.
Right.
I mean, how do all dictatorships start? We're here to help you.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, come on. We're here to help you. And then, you really can't read that book, but it's for your safety. And little by little, your rights get taken away till you have none.
Well, and when I was in the military, I was over in Europe and in Germany, and I would have to travel into East Germany as well. I remember going through their experience, their checkpoints, their paranoia and fear, and the VAPO, Polizei, People's Police. Everything was looked at. Everything was checked.
Yes.
And me being American and not being used to that, it went totally against my grain. And so you look at that, and you apply that to what's going on. And you're right. That's how dictatorships start.
So I have this way. We had two complaints. One was a Holocaust survivor, but I get that. But on the flip side of that is you're coming to see the diary. You know how this ends.
Right.
Well, and like you said, you have the antagonist. Without the antagonist, there's no story.
Exactly.
Why are you coming,
exactly.
at all? So, but I understood. But the other complaint was kind of interesting. They completely did not get you being out there. They read it wrong. Like, how dare you greet us in this way? I didn't think you weren't nasty to anybody.
Oh, no.
When you have a smile on your face,
We are glad you're here.
Right.
And we do the security stamp on the back just in case there's an air raid.
See?
The Americans have been coming over every night.
Yeah.
And the English and the bombing, it hurts the dog's ears, But if there is an air raid, you have to go to the air raid shelter. You come back to stamp, get you in, and you watch the rest of the show. Yeah.
Yeah, and most people got they had fun, and there were a lot of people that they didn't get this stamp. They went back to get it.
Yes, indeed, they did. Can I get one too?
I was like, yeah, sure, yeah, it was a fun up. So yeah, we're sorry that some people were offended, but hey, when the numbers of people that came, that's what happened.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're going to get people they just absolutely love. There are people that hate it. There are people, and then there's everyone else in between.
Right.
It is what it is.
Well, I had a great time doing it.
Thank you so much for doing it. Yeah.
One lady was there, and she was saying she was trying to communicate with me, and I was in character, and she says, "How long have you been here?" And I replied in broken German and English, and she goes, "Where in Germany are you from?" And we kept this up for about 15 minutes out there. And I would struggle, Fatima, in English, I see, forgive my English is not so good, And then finally, I couldn't do it anymore. And I says, "Ma'am, I'm really from Texas. Y'all come back now, yeah?" And she goes, "Oh, you are such a dog." But she laughed. She had a good time with it. Right. So if you ever find yourself in another country and you don't speak the language, you just speak louder and slower.
Which is what we all do.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know why we think that's going to improve things, but
sometimes it does.
So what's next for you?
Well, actually, kind of a renaissance.
Yeah.
Are you talking about here on stage?
Anywhere.
Oh, well, I have a World War II event up toward Waco on the 10th of May. Yes. And then in August, I leave to do the shoot up in Ohio for the D-Day anniversary. My next, hopefully, performance will be a renaissance of doing MASH. Yep. We did that. You and I did that. Yes, we did.
Yeah, we did. That's 10 plus years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Easy. Maybe 12, yeah.
And I had a great time doing it. I was so pleased when I saw the theater was doing it again in there. Had a great time doing that.
So where have you traveled to? I mean, obviously you've been to Europe, so okay.
Oh, yes.
That I get. But where else?
Europe, of course, I was in the military twice.
Twice? Wait a minute. Whoa, twice? Why twice?
Well, the first time I was real young and went in. I was a combat medic, 91 Charlie 20, airborne medic, and got out and went into civilian, went to law enforcement, and then they called me back, so I went back in again as a warrant officer, and which is the best rank in the military to have.
This confuses me too. Why is that warrant officer? If you
okay, a warrant officer, you're not an enlisted guy,
right? And
you're not an officer. You're appointed. Well, the sergeant major would come up to me and go, "What are you doing in my army?" I said, "Sergeant major, it's a secret, And
it's a secret.
But I did that. Actually, was a general's aide for a while. And I was up in Alaska, and then I was reassigned to the 49th Aviation Detachment. Got called back in. General Westall was my commanding officer from Anahuac. And he says, we got a problem. Because I was assigning flights and missions to officers that were captains, majors, even like colonels. He says, we got a little rank inversion. And I go, oh. And so he says, we can't have that. I says, so I can be your aide again? He said, no, that's not going to happen. What is going to happen is that we're going to have to get you commissioned.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. And I knew how the sergeant major did with second lieutenants. Not good. So I said, well, sir, I don't want to be commissioned. And he said, son, I don't care what you want. I'll tell you what's going down. And so I went, but I went from a warrant officer one to a first lieutenant, 6 years.
So you skip butter bars.
Yeah, thank God.
Thank goodness.
But I was in Alaska at Fort Richardson, and I flew air recon over the interior of Alaska, over the Bering Sea. We monitored what the Russians were doing.
Of course, yes.
And had a great time doing that. We would overfly.
So what time was the period? Decades?
This is in the late 80s, early 90s, I think.
Yep.
One of the things, my call sign was Dragonfly 6. My wingman, his call sign was Gunslinger. So we would overfly these Russian ships, and we would tune in, catch their frequency. So we changed up our call sign.
Okay.
I was Moose, he was Squirrel, we had Boris, Natasha, Peter, and we would mess with them over the radio, and pretty soon they would reply back, what is Moose? What is Squirrel? And we kept this going on for months and months and months. There was one time I landed my aircraft and I was ordered to report to the chief of staff, Most Ricky Tick. So I got my debriefing done, my stuff, and went in there, popped the salute, yes, sir. He says, I need to talk to you about your radio problem. I said, sir, my radio is working just fine. He says, cut the crap. He says, I'm getting calls from the Coast Guard listening post in Attic, Alaska, wanting to know when the next episode of the Rocky and Bullwinkle show is coming out. He says, I know what you're doing. He says, but you're going to have to tone it down a little bit. So,
well, the Americans obviously got it, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But the Russians, it just blew their mind, you know. So, but Я очень интересный товарищ. It was an interesting time in there. So,
just after the fall of the Berlin Wall?
Yes.
Just after the fall.
Yeah. I went, did that for a while. My wife in the military as well.
Yeah. So you both lived in Alaska then?
Yes, yes. That's where I met my wife.
Right. Did you ever go to Whittier?
To where?
Whittier.
Oh, my
Whittier,
God,
Alaska.
yes.
And it's just an interesting town. It used to be all military, right?
Right.
Right.
In fact, it was a submarine base.
Yes, and it used to be the only way you could get there was by train, by boat, or by plane.
You had to go through the mountain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now you can drive there. I lament. Come on, you get to drive there now?
But the thing about it is that was a redoubt that if the balloon ever went up, the entire government could relocate. They would sortie everything out of Puget Sound and go up there. And they do not know how deep that sound is. And they did do underwater nuclear testing there. Right. But the buildings are still there. Yeah. You can buy them cheap.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why, but yes, you could. Some of the best coffee was there. You know, the little train station, like a little 4x4, 5x5 hut. Right. That was awesome coffee. And they get whatever they wanted.
Right. But it's an interesting. Alaska is beautiful.
Beautiful country.
My daughter and grandsons still live there. Mm-hmm. You couldn't blow them out of there with dynamite.
Really? You either love it or hate it. I don't think there's an in-between there.
You know, it all depends on your mindset.
Yes.
But as a matter of fact, we're going up there latter part of May. Right. my grandson is graduating from high school and going into the military.
Right.
So, but my wife, she was a full-bird colonel.
Wow.
And she still outranks me. And,
well, they're the boss, right?
Yeah.
They're the boss. They're always the boss. What are you talking about?
And I retired as a major. So.
Oh, you did? Wow.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for your service. Absolutely. You. So how many generations does this span?
Hold on just a minute. While I was out there doing the pre-show,
yes,
I had a guy come up and says, "Thank you for your service."
He knew? He knew about your service?
No. He just saw the uniform.
Oh.
And
but that's an interesting. We can talk about that. Professional courtesy. Yes. I mean, for the where it's like I said, because there were people in all. It's true of all service. So they're the profession. They respect the profession. That they're dedicated their lives to that. And is there a professional courtesy? I guess to different the militaries. Is that just on a personal level? I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
A respect, if you would.
The thing is that. There's always that professional courtesy, even when we do World War II events.
Yes.
If I see an American officer, I render hand salute if he outranks me, and he'll do the same back.
Wow. Yeah.
So, yeah, there is that. And with the veterans are very unique because they're very appreciative no matter what uniform you're wearing,
right?
Nationality, especially if they're World War II, they respect what they went up against.
Right.
They may not agree with the politics, but they weren't there to deal with politics.
No, they had a job to do.
That's
you have orders. You have to follow them.
They were there to enforce policy.
Right. What's the story of Rocky? Huh?
Oh, well, I got doing a lot of history and research on the war dogs.
Yeah.
We had them when I was over in Vietnam. And the thing is that as I started looking into this, from the First World War all the way through, war dogs have played an important part.
Absolutely.
And they've guarded installations. They've done a myriad of tasks. And when I was in Alaska, I actually had a dog that flew with me.
What?
Oh, yeah. Skipper Key.
Yeah.
He actually had the rank of sergeant. And the thing is when we would land in these remote airstrips in Alaska, they had what they call a POL bunker and an arms bunker. POL was fuel. If we ever went to war, they would sortie the jets out of Elmendorf. They would go and rearm and refuel. We would have to go in and check them out from time to time. And the Skipper Key was small and very tenacious when it needed to be, but they located bears because bears and humans and aircraft don't mix.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So, I started looking at war dogs and what their contribution was to the war. Here, not far from where we're sitting, they used dogs for patrolling the beaches. They're still using them in Afghanistan and whatnot.
Yes.
All the dogs that were taken over to Vietnam, none of them were brought back. They were all euthanized. And there was a belief that they had carried a bloodborne pathogen. So they were all put down. Of course, now they're bringing them back. But I had a German Shepherd from Heidelberg. And she would go with me and do all these events. And we would explain what their role was. And she was what they call a Schützenhunde. She was trained to hunt.
Right.
And so I was doing the event in Houston and at Wings Over Houston. I was staying in an RV park because my dog had its own trailer with a star on the door. Anyway, the caretaker came and said, "Is that your dog?" I said, "Yeah, it's my dog in the vehicle." No, the one chained up to the fence. I went, "What?" And he was chained up to a fence and abandoned. they'd already called animal control, and animal control says, well, we're going to have to put the dog down because we don't have room for large animals.
Yes.
So I called my wife, ran the story by, ended up taking him home. When we got him, he was food aggressive. He was not used to any dogs. He was just no manners whatsoever. So he was trained in 2 years, and he's now a certified service dog.
Wow.
So he goes with me to events, and we try and educate people as to the role of the dogs in the military.
You do a nice job. How is Rocky doing after the show?
You know, either I'm going to have to get a therapist or a big jar of Prozac milk bones. He has really, and that's a unique characteristic with him. When he came here, he was, first couple times, he was going, well, this is really weird. And after he was here for a couple of times, the theater is his.
Right.
He's very territorial.
Right.
And the people are his.
To protect. Right?
Yes, to protect. And it was like we were waiting on the final performance out in the lobby, and the cast is there. We're waiting for the curtain call. And one of the bus drivers came in. Well, he alerted onto the bus driver. I don't think he belongs here.
He didn't belong here?
So, yeah, he enjoys it. He likes to be around people, and he's very protective.
Yeah.
So.
And he probably found all the bread that went everywhere, right?
Yes, he does clean up.
That's the nice part. Is, like I said, Harley was in Miracle Worker. We never worried about scrambled eggs, after the food fight. Right. Because they were always gone. He didn't care about curtain call. He said, I'm going to find this. Don't worry, I'll take care of this.
Right. But, yeah, he has really enjoyed being here and working. Yeah. And we would do a run-through every night on stage with him. And so he knew where his spot was and what to do. And, of course, out there meeting the crowd, people, oh, a dog.
Right.
So, and usually I'm known as the guy that holds the leash.
Right.
I'd say, I've got...
that's your job. That's your job.
We were doing Wings Over Houston. I had my German Shepherd, and this guy comes up. He's got all these cameras and whatnot. And he says, hey, I'm from the Houston Chronicle. Can I get a picture? Yeah. I said, well, sure. So we went over there. He sets up his tripod and his, camera. And I have Chrissy sits down. I'm standing there, and he says, can you move a little bit to the left? Okay. A little bit more. No, a little bit. You're still in the picture. Now, my uniform is several thousands of dollars. Okay, and I just been upstaged by a dog.
That's usually how it goes.
Absolutely.
We expect that.
Oh, indeed, and so I got a big kick out of that. But people love to interact, and they did with him quite a bit before the show, and afterwards, greeting them and whatnot. Yeah. So, and he really loved that.
Do you journal about any of this stuff, or about your reenacting or something? Are you not really into that, or?
Well, when you say journal, what
like a diary, basically.
I've
not per se, but
I've been writing a book for several years, not about my experiences, but I will talk to veterans, and in talking to them, I asked certain questions. When I was over in Europe, I interviewed and talked to several veterans and whatnot. And what I want to know is, what was your everyday life like? And what was the funniest thing, or what was the best part of the war? Can you tell me that? Right. And you would be surprised at some of the answers.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This one guy, his name was Willy Zong. He was a German veteran, and he was in a place called Stalingrad during the first part, horribly wounded. medically evacuated out through Austria, and then he was so messed up, they said, no more military for you, and he went to work in a defense plant there. So I asked him, I said, Vili, can you tell me what the best part of the war was? And he goes, let me see. Oh, yeah, I tell you. It was in 1945. It's 45. He says, yeah. He says, I just gotten off work, and I was sitting down with my wife, and we were having our meal, and there's a knock on the door, and I open it up, and there is an officer and the military police, and they hand me a piece of paper, and they said, congratulations, you are now fit to serve Fuhrer and Fatherland. You will report to the train station tomorrow, and you will fight the Russians. I said, Willie, I'm sorry, maybe you misunderstood me. What was the best part? He says, no, you wait. And I said, okay. And he says, last night I filled out my will, and in the morning I get my stuff and I go to the train station. And all of a sudden the air raid sirens went off. And the American bombers were coming over. And they were dropping the bombs, and the trains were exploding. We dived into a ditch, and the ditch was filling up with blood, and it was flames shooting up in the air. And I said, Willie, hold on. I said, again, I want to know the best part. He says, no, you wait. You Americans are so impatient. And he says, then, all of a sudden, the silence. The raid was over. I said, Willie, how can that be the best part? He says, you don't understand. After that, I got down on my knees. I thank God for the American Air Force because the trains are destroyed. I no more have to go fight the Russians. So they marched into a Kaserne, which is a German military base, and they had plenty of weapons. They had plenty of ammunition, very little food, very little water. And they were told to wait there, which the Germans obey orders quite well. And they were there, and an American Jeep rolls in. And he said the biggest American he had ever seen in his life, which he hadn't seen too many, kicked in the door and yelled, "Hand hoch!" And they all raised their hands and, surrendered. Come on. Right. And he says, well, we explained to him that we don't have food or water. And so the guy's giving out K-rations, food, and he says he gives us Schokolade and American Zigaretten. Das ist schön. And then he goes away. So we are having food and Schokolade and smoking cigarettes. He says several days later, a whole bunch of American Jeeps come in. They kick in the door and they yell, "Hand hoch!" They all raise their hands. And they say, well, we don't have any food or anything. And they gave them food and cigarettes and even coffee. Yeah. And he says, we got a pretty good thing going here. So you hear stories like that. And there are countless. And I, over time, have written a lot of these down and dealt with them. English aviator, almost he had been shot down and taken prisoner by civilians, and they beat the crap out of him, and they were going to kill him. You kind of get angry when people bomb your home. Okay?
Yeah, minor detail, yes.
And so he's laying there, and a vehicle comes up, and all I can see out of one eye is a pair of boots. And he hears a couple of gunshots, and he figures, that's it, I'm dead. Right. And the crowd scatters, and he's pulled up onto his feet, and he's looking at a German Luftwaffe officer. And the officer puts him in the car and drives off with him. And they go down the road, and they stop at a guest house, which is like a restaurant type thing. Puts the takes the British POW in there and gets him a meal and a mug of beer, Stein beer, and they exchange stories and cigarettes and whatnot, and puts him back in the car, and he says, "I am so sorry, but you're going to have to go to a prisoner of war camp." And the British, guy says, "Yeah, I understand." Well, he spent the rest of the war in a POW camp. Mm-hmm. But I was doing an air show. This was up near Cleveland, and I was giving some lectures as well. And I see this elderly guy come walking up to me, and he grabs a hold of me, and I'm, of course, in German Luftwaffe uniform, mm-hmm. and he gives me a big bear hug. I don't know this guy.
He just walks up to him. It's like, what the?
And he says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, but I made a promise to myself many years ago that the next time I ever saw a German Luftwaffe officer, I would give him a hug and say thank you, because I never could find the real one."
Wow.
Yeah. So it's things like that that you come across and you hear stories about.
Yeah.
And it brings that part of history, that event, that massive play that took place all over the world, mm-hmm. to such a human element, to such a reality. Mm-hmm. And that is what you do. You can read in books all you want.
That's not the same. No. That's not.
But you have to be able to extract the human side of it. Mm-hmm. So that up in Alaska, I met a fella, actually a member of our lodge there, and got to talking to him, and he stands literally about that tall. Mm-hmm. And whenever we would have a meal, they had to make a special stool for him to stand up to wash pots and pans, mm-hmm. because everybody took a turn at it. Right. And anyway, he's Japanese.
Right.
Okay. So I started talking to him, and come to find out, he had been a kamikaze pilot. And I said, "You weren't very good, were you?" He says, "No, I wasn't." He was real young, and it was toward the last part of the war.
Right.
And the thing is that they trained him just very basic.
It's basic stuff, yeah.
And he went to take off to find the American ships and hit them. And it hit a hole in the runway, snapped off the landing gear. Right. Failure mission number 1.
Right.
Number 2 is the engine wouldn't start. Fuel evidently was contaminated, so he missed out on that one.
Right.
Third time, he got off.
Right.
And was flying and looking and he heard something over the radio, and it was Emperor Hirohito.
Yes.
Announcing the surrender of the Japanese Empire. Uh-huh. I said, "What did you do?" He says, "I cried like a baby." He says, I wanted just to crash my plane into the sea."
Oh, but now he doesn't get to fulfill his mission.
Yeah, he can't do it. And so what he did is he turned around and flew back, and just flew until literally he ran out of fuel and bellied into a field.
Right.
Walked around for days and days and days, not really knowing what to do or where to go. Right. And, depending on people to give him handouts. Some people did, give him food. Later on, he, in Japan, occupied Japan, he started, there was more or less a cottage industry there going on. And he got into making toys and ceramics and whatnot. Made an import-export business, and located in Canada.
Right.
And then from Canada to Alaska. So, yeah, that was my kamikaze guy. And a great guy.
Yeah.
I mean, but he was, I asked him how old he was when they were taking him on these missions. He had just turned 16.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
We had some people that are almost 16 and your kids and that's like that. So here, come.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
It's phenomenal. So, yeah, it brings the human element into reality.
When did you serve in Nam? So
I was over there from 70 to 71.
Okay, so this is about when we're starting to pick up. Nixon's starting to kick up bombing Cambodia. This whole bit.
Yeah, well, and what they did is that was under also the Vietnamization program,
right?
And I had extended my tour duty, and then they called a bunch of us in, and they said, well, Nixon's declaring the ground war to be over. We got to send you out, so we can send you to Korea, or we see on your 201 file that you speak German. Yeah, we could send you to Germany. Du bist eine Ewige gerade außer offene Deutschland auch so schnell. So I went over there, and that's what I was doing. Vietnam's a beautiful country. I'd love to go back. I really would. And this time they wouldn't be shooting at me. So that's.
I guess all wounds from all wars. I mean, like you said, there is the personal element that they have to heal. Everyone has their different stories, but for some reason, I guess Nam seems very raw. That one. Do you want to speak to that? I mean, I'm what do you have your own demons that you had to deal with? Or certainly you saw that probably in others, probably more so. But
no, when we came back, we hid in the shadows.
Yeah.
And I tried to apply for a job, and no one would hire you. In fact, the VA representative working at that time at the Employment Commission said, "Don't put down that you're a Vietnam vet." And actually, I went to apply for a job at a hospital, and the guy that was across the desk kind of looked like an armpit with eyeballs. But anyway, he looked at my deal and he says, "Oh, you're a Vietnam vet."
He knew? He just thought that?
No,
you put it. You marked it.
And he says, we don't hire baby killers here. Well, security escorted me off the property and one thing. But, for years, there is a readjustment to that because we were trying to do the job. And whenever we came back and people are throwing dog feces at you and things like this, I understand to a large degree what the German veterans went through. Not all Germans were Nazis, not all Nazis were German.
Right.
And so it took a while to do that. I do have a story, and it's called The Readjustment Blues, if you'd like to hear it.
Sure, yeah. Come on, read it.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
Just out of the infantry this morning, I had to pay my dues of crossing sea, but no one back in boot camp ever warned me what the readjustment blues would do to me. "Welcome to Havana," said the pilot. "We must have made a wrong turn on the way. Let's buy some cigars and keep it quiet. If they don't know we're here, we'll get away." Just as I had realized he was joking, I saw we were in Washington, D.C., because there were all the patriotic buildings, just as I had seen them on TV. Well, it must have been a holiday, because there was this parade, and people carrying signs I couldn't read, but they had made, till I got closer and my heart fell through my socks. There was a battle raging, and the air was filled with tear gas and rocks. And there was the flag I fought against so often, the one I fought for hanging upside down. The wind was blowing hard, the dirt was flying, made the city sky look dark and brown. Saw a girl who could have been my sister, except her hair was long and in her face. She explained this was a demonstration against the war and for the human race. Now, I've seen a lot of strange things in my travels, cannibals and aliens galore, but I never thought I'd see so many people saying, "We don't want your war." Troops all had on uniforms, just like the ones I had worn. But they were all domestic, and my duty had chosen war. And they carried guns, just like the ones across the sea. Except this time I was a citizen, and they were pointing their guns at me. And it was just then that the readjustment blues came through to me.
When did you write this? A long time ago. I guess it's just a microcosm of everyone has the story. And the reason, we did the pre-show that we did, and people probably didn't realize it because all this help with the pictures, is that just because you were on this side didn't mean you were bad. And just because you were on this side didn't mean you were good. You had to know each individual story. Each one was rich.
Exactly.
But it's not obvious by looking at it. And it was a deliberate attempt. Some of them, you can tell this is bad. But some of them, they're not that obvious. You have to really know the story behind what's going on. And every person is like that too.
Well, and also, when I was teaching history, I would tell my students, it doesn't matter about the dates or the people's names. What is important is what motivated them to do the things they did. Mm-hmm. And anti-Semitism was not just in one area, it was worldwide.
Worldwide. And you would be surprised who was.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there is, again, that modus operandi. Yeah. What made people behave in the way they did.
Yes.
And you have to have that. And there was good and bad. There was a movie that came out called The Pianist. Mm-hmm. If you've ever seen it, it's great. Mm-hmm. During the last part, this German officer helps this Jew in hiding, and of course, he meets with a bad fate after the war. But every individual there, like you said, has a story. You have to be brave enough and have the moral courage to ask what that story is.
To appreciate it. So, like I said, I think people came back, like I said, I think people were touched by the performance, but I hope it does stimulate conversation.
Yes.
Because to me, the story is as relevant as ever. We have genocide going on in, half a dozen places of the globe?
Right.
We learned nothing? Yeah.
And I see, again, the younger generation, we have so much freedom as opposed to other countries. Yes. We have so much disposable commodities that we take for granted every day.
Yes.
That they don't.
Right.
And it saddens me that the younger people do not understand what they have now was paid for in sweat and blood.
Yes. I say that, and it's probably not the only time, but I remember an interview with someone, and he says, freedom has one price: blood.
That's it.
And that's sad, but it's true. Right. That's right. That's what we have to do to defend our liberties.
Right.
Yes.
And Friedrich Nietzsche once said that struggle is the eternal father of all things. Whether it's good struggle or bad, it's still that. You have to make the effort. You have to go beyond. You have to be greater than you seem.
Yes.
So, yes, absolutely.
Dan, thank you so much for doing this. We definitely have to do it again. Rocky, thank you for doing this with us. I'm going to ask you the question we've been asking everyone.
Sure.
If heaven exists, what do you want God to say when you get to the pearly gates?
I would say that I know I have been lesser, but make me greater in your eyes.
Dan, thank you so much for being here.